Hey everybody, today we are going to be looking at some basics of scripting in a bash environment. We're going to take a look at some of the basic functions that you can use when you are scripting in bash. And then at the end we're going to put most of them together into a script that hopefully you guys find useful. I encourage you guys to have your own terminal window open and to follow along with me as I'm going through these. You can pause as you need to make sure that you're getting everything and enter these commands and build this script right along with me. So the very first function that we're going to talk about is echo, and you may have used echo before. Echo basically just returns a line of text. And so let's say I wanted to echo hello world, and it is going to return the text hello world. Now you may not know that echo can actually echo to a file, and so if we wanted we could echo to test.txt, and I'm going to echo hello world to test.txt. Now you can see that that created test.txt here on my desktop because that is where I am working right now. And if we cat into our test.txt, you can see that it does indeed contain the words hello world. Now if we were to echo again to test.txt, and we'll say how are you? And then we cat our test.txt, we can see that how are you has overwritten hello world. Hello world is gone. It is nowhere to be seen. And that might not be what we want. Maybe we want to append text instead of overwriting. And so we can do that. We could respond to ourselves. And if we want to append text, we're just going to add two arrows pointing to test.txt. And we're going to say good because we are good. And now when we cat test.txt, we can see that good has been appended to our text file. Clear is a very useful command. Basically just clears the window so that things don't get cluttered up as you are working. Now there also are some variables that we can use. And a variable is basically just something that stores information. So for example, the temperature outside might be a variable, or your name might be a variable, and it's just a way of storing information. There are quite a few variables that are already on your system. You can see many of them by typing env for environment. And we're going to see all sorts of different variables here. We can see our current username here. We can see our present working directory. We can see our login name and our username, and then also this path. Anything that is in this path are going to be scripts and binaries that you can just run without having to type the path to them. So one of these variables that I want you to pay attention here is the user variable. We're going to be taking a look at that here in just a second. We are able to define our own variables with the read command. So let's say I wanted to read my mood, and it's going to ask me, what is your mood? And my mood is happy right now. And so I have just stored mood as a variable, and mood as a variable contains the string happy. And I can echo that back out, and I'm going to echo. And if we want to echo variables, or anytime we want to reference variables, we start with a $sign. So if I echo my mood variable, I return the string happy. And this is something that is very useful. For example, if we wanted to include in our script sort of like a logging function, and we wanted to log every single time somebody ran this script, you have the date function here in bash, and we can return that as a variable by putting it in parentheses. And so that allows me to echo it to a test file. So I'm going to remove my test.txt, and we're going to make log.txt. And so I could maybe echo user ran script at date. And so I can see mlev ran this script at Saturday, March 14th at 11:29 CDT. And if I wanted, I could store that to log.txt, user ran script at date. And we can see log.txt appears, and if I cat into that, oops, that didn't work at all, sorry. If I cat into that, I can see that it ran that, and because I had my double arrows here, it's going to append that. And so next time the script gets run, we can see that we start to build a log of every time that this script was run, and we can see every time that it was run, the username who ran it, which is very, very useful when you're building some more powerful scripts that you may not want all of the end users to run besides maybe your administrators. So we talked about echo, we talked about read. We can actually combine these into multiple lines. So let's say we wanted to store our username. We're going to echo, please enter your username. And then if we put a semicolon in, that's going to split commands so we can enter them onto one line. And then I'm going to read username. And after I run that, it's going to ask me, hey, what's your username? And I'm going to say mlev. And so now if I echo my username, we can see that it did store mlev. You may not always want to be storing things like usernames into variables that could get read. So we might want to, after the fact, read username and then just put blank in there. That way, if I echo my username, we can see that it's blank. I can also say, I could also set my username back to blank. So let's read username again, and I'm going to call it mlev. We can see that mlev is stored in there, but if I say username equals and then put blank in there, you can see that it did also overwrite my variable by doing that. So those are a couple of ways that you can kind of wipe out variables after you're done, which is something that you may find useful so that we're not storing sensitive information in plain text on our computers, which, as you know, is hardly ever a smart thing to do. Capitals do matter in variables, so if I make username equal mlev, whoops, there we go. Capitals do matter, so I echoed username, but if I were to echo username, you can see that it does not return that because username with a capital U is actually a totally different variable in this environment. So that's just something to keep in mind there. We can read variables and not show up what we are typing if we want. We're going to use an S flag, S for secret. So if I wanted to read password, when I'm typing my password, you can see that my super secure password is password, and it's now also stored in plain text on my computer, and basically all of that is bad. So something that we could do instead would be to read with an S and then password, and this time when it comes up, as I'm typing here, you're not seeing what I'm typing. I just mashed my keyboard, so that is a super secure password. Cool. So we've got environment variables. We've got regular variables. We can echo them. We can echo them to a text file. We can enter multiple commands on the same line, and we can sleep. One of the last things I want to talk about right now are if-then statements, also known as logic. And if-then statements are, you can get really complicated with them, but at the end of the day, it's just, if this happens, then I want this to happen. If it is raining out, then I will grab my umbrella. else I am not going to grab my umbrella, end if. Now in Bash, our end if is phi. So we use an if and then a phi. If you've ever used logic in a different environment, you are maybe used to end if. The if and the then and the else are all the same, but we're going to use phi in order to end our if because it's if backwards, and that's clever. So we're going to build a script right now that's going to help us to log in to MySQL. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create the file that is going to become this script. And so, I am going to sudo nano, and I am going to just create MySQL login.sh, and may have typoed that. Nope, I didn't. Cool. So we are now working on MySQL login.sh. I'm just going to write it out to the desktop so that you guys can see the file there. Maybe I'm not. Oh, there it is. And the very first thing that we always want to start every script with is called the shebang. Now, when we are scripting, if we put a pound sign in, also known as a hashtag, I guess, anything that is after that is going to be a comment. Now, comments are very, very useful. You can kind of tell you can tell yourself something or somebody else who may be reading your script. Sometimes when you look at a chunk of code, it's difficult at first glance to tell what it is, and comments can help out with that. Anything that's after a hashtag is going to be a comment, and so we're going to build what's called a shebang, and this is the shebang right there. Now, basically, the shebang is going to be a comment according to Bash. So Bash isn't going to read this line, but when the operating system tries to open this file, it doesn't see that as a comment, so it is going to read it, and therefore we can tell our operating system what shell environment we would like to read this file in. And we're going to read it in bin bash. And so we have shebang bin bash, and that tells our operating system, hey, run this with bash. But then when bash opens it, it's going to say, oh, hashtag, I don't like hashtags, so I'm just not even going to read that line. Cool. So we're going to build a script to log into MySQL. And when we log into MySQL, we need a username and we need a password. And we need the path to the username and the password. And so the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to ask for our username. And so we're going to enter or echo enter username. And then we're going to read the variable username. And then we're going to echo enter password. And then we're going to read password, but we're going to read it with an S for secret. And then we're going to clear because we want a clean area to work in here. Now, if you have a password in MySQL, you can log in using user local MySQL bin MySQL, and then you're going to put you and your username, which is usually root if we want to log in as root, and then you can do a P, and then you can type your password, and if you type it here without any spaces, it's actually going to pass that right to MySQL, and you will log in. So let's say my password was pass1234. If I were to run this, it would log me in as root using the password 1234. However, if you don't have a password on that particular username, you can log in. Sorry, I can't talk and type something different at the same time. You can log in just by typing you and then the username and no P. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to run this top one if there's no password, and the bottom one if there is a password, but I'm going to replace these with my variables here. And so this is username. This is username. And this is going to be password. So now I have one line that wants to get run if I have a username with no password, and one line that wants to get run if I have a username with a password. I can use an if-then statement to run those. So we're going to do if my variable password is equal to blank, then I'm going to run this line right here. Indenting like that is good to kind of help you figure out where the heck you are and what is nested within your if-thens and what is not. So if my password is blank, then I'm going to run user local MySQL bin MySQL and then a U with my username. If password is not blank, so else, I'm going to run this command and enter my password, and then I'm going to do my end if. Now finally, we really don't want to be storing usernames and passwords in plain text on our computer, so we're going to just wipe out both of those right now, and we're going to make username equal to blank and password equal to blank. We're going to save that, and we're going to exit. Now when I run this, I can do a sudo bash and then mysql login.sh. Asks me for my sudo password. It's going to ask me for my username, and my username is root. And I don't believe I have a password right now. And, oh, MySQL is not running. Give me just 1 second. Okay. We'll try that one more time. Sorry about that. My username is root. My password is blank. And as you can see, it took me right in. Now, if I wanted, I could exit back out and I could run this again, pretending that I did have a password. And as you can see, when I enter my password, you guys don't see anything, but it's going to tell me access denied because you entered the wrong password, you dummy. So one more time, we run our MySQL login script, enter our username root, and I say, oh yeah, that's right. When I made my root user, I didn't actually create a password, so I'm just going to hit enter. And it runs that first line, and it takes us right into MySQL. So I hope that was useful. I hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions, there are tons of resources online. If you just go onto YouTube and look up Bash scripting basics or Google, there are tons of resources out there. And good luck.